Welcome to a special limited series of the Capital Ideas podcast called The Power of Advice. At Capital Group, we've always believed in the power of advice and that individuals are best served with financial advisors. We also appreciate that advice can come in many ways and from people with very different experiences. In this limited series, we've lined up insightful conversations with industry leaders, business innovators, entrepreneurs, and they're all going to share their journey of building brands, businesses, reinventing careers, and the lessons they've learned along the way. Welcome to The Power of Advice. So our first episode is Larry Fitzgerald. We're very happy to have Larry with us.
So good to be with you, Mike. Appreciate you having me.
No, I'm glad you're here. So, Larry, you are very recognizable. Most people will know you as one of the most successful American football players of all time, 17 years in the Arizona Cardinals. What some people wouldn't know is that you're an equally successful businessman and an incredibly generous philanthropist, which I found intriguing. You and I got to know each other through the Boys and Girls Club. And you told me a story during one of our sessions one day about the 2011 offseason. And I have a picture. We have both listeners and viewers. For the listeners, I have a picture of a young Larry, very fancy suit outside 270 Park Avenue in New York City, where you decided to be an intern at a financial services firm in the offseason. I think this was after your fourth Pro Bowl. So you were established, but you said, I want to do something more after football.
Yeah, so it wasn't really my idea. I hadn't really understood like what it is I needed to do to kind of prepare myself for the inevitability when the lights go off in terms of your first profession, right? And I hadn't met you initially, because if I'd have met you in 2011, my first internship would have been here at Capital.
Still time, Larry, still time.
But I ended up meeting a guy who was the CEO at the time, Frank Bisignano, randomly, and he asked me, had I started thinking about what it is that I wanted to do after I got done playing? And the question was no, I hadn't. And I really hadn't had anybody be so direct in asking me a question like that. Most of the conversations always go about what you were doing and how excited about the next season. But, Frank took a real keen interest in trying to help me prepare for the inevitable. And that led to him asking me to come do an internship with him. And, it wasn't exactly your typical off-season move for most guys.
A lot of guys were doing something different, I'm guessing.
Doing a lot of different things, but it wasn't doing that. And so I gave it some thought, and I was like, I don't really know if I want to get into banking. And he was like, it's not so much about getting into banking. It's about putting yourself in uncomfortable positions. And only when you're uncomfortable in life do you really have to look inward and figure out what it is that I want to do and how I want to go about doing it. And so banking wasn't my jam, but it helped me find what it is that I was really passionate about doing that I wasn't challenged to think about.
And were you treated like other interns? Or, I mean, it's interesting to have an NFL player just coming off his fourth Pro Bowl and then just being an intern in New York City. Did they treat you special, or are you working early, working late, doing all the intern stuff?
No, I had the same workload as everybody else.
That's amazing.
And if anything, I was much more nervous and felt out of place there more than any time I've ever lined up on a football field, right? You look at all the rest of the kids and they're from Wharton Business School and GSB and Tuck and Chicago Booth and Kellogg and all these fancy prestigious universities that you never went to. You didn't even graduate from college at that point. And so you felt like you were outmatched and outgunned walking in there. And then you get to around the people there and you start getting tasked with assignments and you see that everybody has their strengths and everybody has their weaknesses. I had the benefit of leading alpha males every single week and finding, ways to motivate and inspire people who, sometimes don't see, the way that you see it. And that works in any field. And, leadership is a tool and a skill that needs to be honed and sharpened. And I could do that anywhere.
And what advice would you give? So one of your three boys goes to an internship in New York City next year, or 2 years from now, whatever it would be. What's your advice to them going into that same type of internship?
My son is 16 years old, my oldest son, Devin, and he's going into his senior year. He's doing an internship this summer with Sunbelt Holdings. And so I was doing that at 25 or 26, and my son is doing it 10 years earlier. So that experience helped me, be able to push my son into an area he probably wouldn't have done if I hadn't had Frank pushing me towards it. So the next generation is supposed to be better. They're supposed to see the world in a way that you probably didn't see it at that age. And so I'm really happy with the direction he's going in, and hopefully his brothers
follow suit,
see that and say, look, this is something I want to do as well.
Be curious, be passionate.
Yep, for sure.
And did Frank become a mentor? That kind of relationship, again, the relationships you build is probably more important than the work you do. In those situations, were there mentors like Frank and others you found during that summer?
Yeah, Frank is still a great friend. I know we talk, at least once a quarter. Frank has been invaluable in terms of his knowledge and his understanding of like the landscape where I was trying to navigate. And so Frank has been great. And there's 25, 30 other people that I could say who have been just as helpful along the way in helping me navigate spaces that, quite frankly, I just didn't understand. I would put another person like Ed Stack, CEO, founder of Dick's Sporting Goods. He asked me to join his board 6 years ago. I had no board experience. I didn't understand board governance. And, he literally took a chance on somebody who didn't necessarily fit the typical mold of a board member. And so, like, without that experience, there's no way I would see the world the way I see now. And so, like, being privy to those type of conversations and drawing on your experience as an athlete and other things that you've done, I think, were invaluable to my growth. And so, like, those type of relationships have meant the world to me.
Let's get into business a little bit. Larry Fitzgerald Enterprises. I think you've made about 200 different investments. How'd you go from the first one to the 200th? I mean, obviously that's a journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the first one I was out actually at GSB, taking some executive business courses out there. And it was my first time ever being at Stanford. And so I was kind of going around campus when we had a little bit of break, and I stumbled into like the Innovation Center, and I saw these young entrepreneurs working on really, really interesting problems trying to solve. Mm-hmm. And I saw, all of these partners from Sand Hill Road. I saw partners from Bessemer and IVP and Kostler and Sequoia, and like coming in and helping these students kind of incubate their companies. And I was just fascinated by the ecosystem. I was just like really enamored, and I ended up meeting a young founder there, and we got to talking, and he asked me about, what do I know about virtual reality? And I said, I don't know much. And, for like the next week, I would come back and we meet, and we kind of walk me through it. The original application was originally designed for servicemen and women who were downrange to come back, and as they were being assimilated back into civilian life, when you were a Marine and you were kicking doors in and going house to house and, dealing with, mortars being shot into your base and seeing friends injured, it was really difficult to come back and take your 6 month into daycare and just kind of get back into civilian life. And what happened is you would get the VR goggles, and it would kind of give you simulated things that you would do, going to the grocery store and the door closing behind you, and how you react to that sound after you've been hearing a different sound for 6 months. And that original application turned into, being able to help, athletes be able to watch themselves individually, because if you watch tape for most NFL teams, it's pretty archaic. It hasn't changed in a long time. They have an end zone that you can see all 22, and they have a sideline that you can see all 22. But if I really wanted to watch what I was doing, if I'm coming off the line, am I moving my toe a half a degree? Like, that's slowing me down from getting into my route quicker. I wouldn't be able to see that from those cameras angles. So what this allowed us to do is be able to see what I was doing individually, and it helped me, being able to make split-second decisions more efficiently and also see my deficiencies. And so
you were an early investor in this company?
Early investor. The Arizona Cardinals ended up signing a contract with them, and other NFL teams led to a Pac-12, when the Pac-12 existed, a relationship with them. And so I saw not only my ability to be able to help them think about other ways they could scale their business, but also be able to help nurture and bring customers. It really suited my personality. I've been doing it ever since.
What have you learned along that way? Obviously, in the structuring of those deals, or the investments, and when you monetize and how involved you get personally. I'm sure it's different today than when you first made that first investment. What are some of the things you've learned on that journey?
No, I still like to be heavily invested. I still like to be involved with the founder, and as they scale and, hire new employees, and if there's pivots along the way, and how I can help, develop relationships for them. So, like, of all the 200 plus companies I've invested with, am I hands-on every single day with all of them? No. But you think about chess.com, we had our big annual Blitz Champs event last week where 8 NFL players competed for $100,000 to whatever charity they wanted to. That was something that Danny and I, one of the co-founders, thought about. Everybody sees football players, these rough, tough, tumble guys. Like, how can we shape them, not only football players, but basketball players, hockey players, baseball players, and show that these guys are actually really smart dudes. They think, they're strategic, they know how to strategize, and they just happen to focus their attention on football, but they could do whatever they wanted to do. And so I wanted to find a way we can humanize the athletes, right, and maybe help them be looked at as intellectuals, because most people just don't look at us that way. It's been a lot of fun. I wake up at night sometimes. I have a notepad by my bed all the time. I wake up like, man, this company, I need to think about this. We need to send an email.
It's a lot of moving parts.
A lot of moving parts.
So you're big into goal setting.
Mm-hmm.
Larry Fitzgerald Enterprises, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, whatever the time period is, what does it look like?
I think it's more organized. A lot of the stuff that I've done over the last 10 years, it wasn't always uniform, right? It wasn't like, hey, this is the sector I want to attack and I want to do it this way. It was just, I'm at a conference, I meet somebody really interesting, and it kind of grows from there. So if there was something that I could say for 10 years from now, like, I would be much more strategic in how I approached the development of our business.
So what you're looking for to round out your portfolio, so you don't have maybe so much concentration in one area? Or
So when I first started, I would invest in late stage companies. I would just invest in growth stage, early stage, seed, across the board. Now I really focus more so on seed and Series A. So like, I'm much more concentrated on what I look at. I'm not saying I don't see a lot of amazing deals in other ways.
But you're early.
I like to focus on early. It gets my blood going. I just love to be involved early on and seeing it grow and connecting them with larger firms, to give us favorable marks, on the next round.
Yeah.
And so like those type of things, they get.
Yeah, you're competitive. You want to win, whatever it's in.
Yeah.
And what did you learn directly on the field that translates into the boardroom? Is there one or two things you would point to that make you a better CEO of Larry Fitzgerald Enterprises is it the discipline? Is it the routine? What is it that translates from one to the other?
Well, I think just to never being comfortable. Having wonderful leaders on the football field like Kurt Warner or Emmitt Smith, two of the greatest players, they led completely different. Emmitt was not a very vocal person, but he led every day by example in the way he went about his business and how he treated people. He knew everybody's name in the entire building, right? And then Kurt, He would challenge you. He would be right in your face. Larry, you said you want to be great, but today you weren't great, and I need you to be better tomorrow. And like
real-time feedback.
Real-time feedback. But both of them were effective in how they led, right? And so being able to see those type of leaders across all mediums has been very helpful in how I think about it. And especially as you see different businesses. I use Dix as an example. When I joined the board 6 years ago, the company was in a very different, it was right in COVID. The world was falling apart.
Yeah.
And to see Lauren and Ed lead, during the most tumultuous times in the history of the company, and how kind and thoughtful and compassionate they were, not taking salaries and just being so caring along that process. And then you look, 3-4 years later, and it's grown at such an exponentially fast rate that, still thinking about the LTIPs and how we want to incentivize employees to be all in the 401k, and like just thinking big picture about how he can help the teammates, and like those type of things. I learned so much from those type of leadership.
This is not a football show, but I do want to talk a little bit about football. Next year, you will be eligible for the Hall of Fame. I like your shot. I like your chances. No one likes to say it's over before it's over, but what would that mean to you?
Obviously, the greatest honor you can receive individually. I would have loved to have been able to win a championship and, be able to do something that a team can do together. It's like nothing better than that, right? But I would say a great consolation to that is to be able to be inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I think less than 280 individuals have ever even been, 380, have been inducted into the Hall of Fame. So to be in such an illustrious group of people, it's an unbelievable honor.
It's bad luck to congratulate you in advance, but I think you'd be a great inductee. I'm going to ask you a few other questions and just whatever's on top of your mind of football, okay? So bear with me on it, and you can't hedge it.
All right.
No,
okay.
You're too nice of a person. You can't hedge it. Favorite teammate?
Oh, Mike, come on, man.
All right, 2 favorite teammates, but that's the biggest head you got.
That would be like me asking you who's your favorute employee that you ever work with.
They're associates, not employees, and I think they're all wonderful. Now, who's your favorite teammate?
Who I'm closest to right now is Kelvin Beacham. He's my partner. We work a lot together. We just share a lot of similarities. So, like today, he is definitely the person I'm closest to that I played with.
All right, favorite away game city?
Venue would be Seattle. The place is nothing like that place when we would play against them. That's when they had the Legion of Boom and Marshawn Lynch, Russell Wilson, Pete Carroll. They just had some really great. You couldn't hear yourself think. On third down in the fourth quarter, literally, it was you couldn't.
So the 12th man, that's a real thing.
It was a real thing. It was a real thing. But coolest venue is Lambeau Field, just because of the history. There's so many great players and coaches and iconic games that took place there. And you see this Taj Mahal like stadium in this little town of Green Bay. Literally less than 100,000 people live there. And then the team is owned by, the citizens and the fans, like such a really unique place and organization. And so definitely Green Bay is the cool, like they don't even have like a hotel you stay in Green Bay. You got to stay in Appleton and like drive and there's no freeway to get there. You're like driving through these communities and when Lambeau Field is like right next to like a bunch of houses and churches and bank, like there's nothing around. There's no like huge retail spaces. It's like stepping back in time. It's really cool.
I'll take a pilgrimage with my brothers when the Dolphins show up and play the Packers. Worst visiting locker room, like place where you think you got to wear your cleats into the shower.
My rookie year, we played in Buffalo, and I know like they upgraded the locker room, and they're building a new stadium there coming up, but it was pretty rough.
Back then, it was a little rough?
It was rough. Candlestick was pretty bad, too. I mean, they had like 8 showers for like 60 guys.
Didn't work out so well.
There was like a long line waiting to get in there, and so those are pretty poor accommodations.
All right, last one. The record you're most proud of in your football career?
Probably staying with the same team for as long as I did.
Yeah.
I think, you look around and I see all these players that move from team to team, and to be able to stay with one organization, be able to align with the community, find the church home, find people who would not just feed you, but teach you how to fish, and be able to build relationships with so many wonderful people in the city for 20 plus years. I think that's something that I appreciate the most.
They're fortunate that you stayed there that long as well, because you've given a lot back to that community.
I look at it, that community has given me much more than I ever be able to give back to them. They gave me a home. They gave me a place to kind of have my expression as an athlete, and then now they've adopted me as one of their own, even though I'm from Minnesota originally.
Right. A lot warmer down in Phoenix.
It's definitely a lot warmer.
So talking about community at Capital Group, it is one of our 5 core values. We talked about your business. I want to talk about your philanthropy a bit. The foundation you created, I think about 20 years ago, focused on both youth education and breast cancer awareness. Can you talk about that and your passion around both?
Yeah, so we try to bridge the digital divide on the youth side. I go to so many of these schools, and these young people don't have the technology that is necessary to be successful in this ever-changing educational environment. And so, we try to bring in mobile laptops and units and tablets to be able to use them in art class. They can use them in history to research. They can take them to the music class, hook them up to electric guitars. Like, they're really interchangeable in how you want to use them. And I just want to make education fun through technology. And that's something that's really important to me. I lost my mother to breast cancer in 2003. We have partnered with MD Anderson in the Phoenix area to be able to bring mobile mammograms to areas where most often men and women don't have good relationships with the healthcare system. There's a little bit of mistrust. They don't want to come in, we'll bring it to them. That's been something that we've really been passionate about, and continuing to raise awareness for early detection.
I'm sure that's changed people's lives. I mean, not knowing and then having the access very close to you and finding out something that can hopefully change and save your life. It's just an amazing thing you're doing.
Yeah, and then obviously, our passion of ours at Boys and Girls Club, you're thinking about 5 million young people that we every single day have the ability to make their lives better and find ways to be able to, help equip them with the necessary tools to be successful, like you and I have been, and to be able to partner with you and so many other people like that has brought me a lot of joy as well.
You were to the Boys and Girls Club mission long before I was, but I found it to be one of the most rewarding things I've ever done. I just think you're right. 5 million kids you're trying to help some way, shape, or form achieve their full potential. There's not a lot better things than that. I want to talk about chess, and I have a picture I'm going to put up on the screen that shows your passion around chess. I want to talk a little bit about that passion. It's a really cool picture, by the way. And so the picture is showing Larry in front of a chessboard. It's something you're passionate about, and you've talked about it, that it makes you more patient and adaptable and strategic in your decision-making for business. Talk about that connection for you.
I'll go back a little bit of time.
Yeah.
But when I first started learning how to play chess, I was 7 years old, and I remember being like this rambunctious kid that, often was like pulled out of class or being disruptive and not paying attention. And, I remember going and seeing a psychiatrist and them saying, hey, he probably should, be on Ritalin or Adderall, because he's really hyper. And I remember my mom and dad having a discussion with my after school program, Horizon Youth Program, at Sabathani Community Center back in South Minneapolis. The chess instructor and youth counselor was there, and he said, hey, why don't we put him in chess? My mom and dad were like, why chess? He said, it help him slow down his thoughts. He'd be a lot more strategic and thoughtful. Sometimes he's playing offense, sometimes he's playing defense. He has to understand what his opponent is trying to do to him while he's trying to do something to them. And I think it would really help him collect his thoughts and be able to help him focus a little bit more. And so chess originally was brought to me as a tool to calm me down.
Yeah.
And it really did. My grades drastically improved, and I started playing in city competitions every single weekend, and it was a lot of fun to be able to compete against people from an intellectual standpoint, as opposed to just like dunking a basketball or catching a football. Right. And so I just really gravitated.
Wait, you could dunk?
Yeah.
You didn't tell me that. All right, but keep going.
Yeah. So I really gravitated towards it and made a lot of really cool friends and traveled to different cities around Minnesota and these competitions. And, so I really love it.
So you showed me something when you got here today, and you travel.
Yeah.
You travel with your portable chess set. So can you describe this for folks who are listening?
Yeah. So I have it in my bag all the time. And I'm on a plane, I'm talking to somebody sitting down, or I always ask them if they play chess, right? And sometimes they say yes, and I'll put the chess board right on the table. Now, I don't know if you want the smoke today. I don't want to beat you. I don't want to beat you in your own.
No, that's probably a good idea. You can roll that right back up.
Yeah, so I love the game. I still play it. I play with my kids all the time.
They beat you? Any of the three beat you?
No, they can't beat me, but they're getting better. My middle son, Apollo's been playing a long time, and he's pretty skilled. He's gotten better.
But you never let him win. Oh, I love it. My youngest son finally beat me in ping pong when he was about 19, and I'll tell you, it was the happiest day of his 19 years at that stage. So not letting them win is so important.
I'm not gonna lie to you. So my 17-year-old son, I played him in basketball. I could always beat him, right? And then last summer, he had me down. I think it was like 9-3 to 11, and I fought myself back into it. But it took everything I had to win that game, and I'm not playing him anymore. Because he would
hanging up the basketball shoes.
He would never say, "I beat you, Dad," in basketball ever. And so I had to fight. And he took me to a place I probably shouldn't have gone to, but I had to get the W though.
That's so funny. Last time I arm wrestled my oldest son when he's 15, I'm like, I'm out.
Yeah,
tap right out to keep my undefeated record. I'll finish up with a few personal things about you, your legacy. What kind of legacy do you want to leave behind?
I don't think about legacy all that much. We're all gonna go, and people will get up and they'll say nice things about us, and then they'll move on with their lives, right? People say anything about me, I was gonna say, he gave more than he took. He was a kind person, and he thought about others and their needs. And, if that's said, I could rest easy.
Well, you've done something very right, because everyone has something good to say about you. In terms of advice, what advice do you give to your sons?
Just to put your heart and soul into things that you do. If it's in the classroom, if it's being a great boyfriend, being a great brother, being a good teammate, just strive for excellence in everything that you do. And also just be unapologetically who you are. I think it's important, people are dragged and tugged in so many different directions. And, I think, people struggle with the identity of who they are or who they should be. I think there's something internally that kind of guides you, and I think you should follow that intuition.
So at the end of the podcast that I normally do with our investment professionals, I always talk about this moment of gratitude, because I think generally, and this is a societal comment, it's not any individual comment, that we all lack the gratitude we should have. And I always ask them to tell us something we're grateful for, and I hand them a mug. And the mug that I hand them is the obsessively grateful mug. But for you, when I ask you what you're grateful for, I'm going to hand you the Power of Advice mug as our first Power of Advice podcast guest.
Thank you.
So we're going to give that to you and also ask you what you're grateful for.
I'm grateful to have great friends like you. And I think that's something that I never take for granted. We live our entire lives and we come into close proximity with a lot of people, and to be able to have that connection with people who are like-minded, like-spirited, and have some of the same ideals and values that you share, that's really what makes me happy and extremely grateful.
Well, I'm grateful you said yes to be our first guest. You're an incredible human being. I think a lot of people know your story. I hope through this more people do, because you're one of the most inspirational success stories I've seen from whatever you touch. Whatever you touch turns great, and you're humble, and you're a kind person, and you give back. So I'll say that long before we have to worry about legacy later on. I'll say that today. It's very important. Thank you for being our first guest. I am going to ask you to write your one piece of advice in our new Power of Advice guest book.
Okay.
But I appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Mike. It's such a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.